Yeah, I would add, I think for me, what I'm seeing is definitely for like an everyday person that just has access to these tools, everyone does. Research is easy. Like I feel like that the AI has, like we had the internet and then there's different ways, okay, now we're gonna click blue links to find out things. But I think the real magic is that it really is a much better way to experience the world's information, I think. Because if you search something, you're getting back a much more personalized response. So from like a research perspective as business owners, I think that's key too. Like what are the market trends I should be aware of, or if I have this or that. And then second use case, I think from a generative standpoint, so everyone kind of mentioned that too, which is, okay, if you need to generate something that's maybe not your strength to generate, social media ads, a report, to me, it's a really, really good thought partner. And you can access that with just general AI. And then what I think will happen, and what we're starting to see, is things you'll have to pay for as a business, but starting to automate some of those overhead tasks. So you guys had mentioned that too, and I think some of that. But I was curious if you all think, kind of where are we at? If you look at like the kind of hype curve, right? So you have like the trough of disillusionment, and you have like this, if you guys have seen that. And I sometimes I feel like I'm traveling through that a bit. It's like I get super excited and I'm like, this thing doesn't work at all. Or I'm like, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever used. And I'm like, this is really garbage. So I'm curious for you all, do you think there's like some hype there, and like where should some focus areas be, or if you have some specific examples? We can hop around, or if anyone has ideas.
I have a pretty strong opinion on this. So, I came up in the digital media industry in the late 90s. Right, and I was there for the big dot-com boom days of 99, 2000, and my company felt it when we busted in 2001. We went from, at that time I started a digital media agency. I started out of my apartment with 3 guys working out of an apartment in Brooklyn. Within a year and a half, we grew to 70 people with 2 offices in Manhattan, 1 in LA. And once we did that, after a year and a half, we went to 4 people in 6 months. All right, because of the hype cycle. Now, we all know the internet was here to stay. However, the amount of investment that was being pumped into all the dot-coms at that time, just because people they had FOMO. They were afraid of missing out, right? They saw this big boom, and so they were, placing big bets on all of these dot-coms, but for the investors, it was okay. I'm investing in 100 companies. As long as one hits really big and 99 go out of business, that's right. That one company will recoup the losses of all of the other 99 companies that I invested in, right? I think we're going to see a very similar pattern happening with AI, right? But I think the hype cycle is going to be very quick, and I think we're going to get over it very fast, right? So I think what you'll see is big investments going into AI like you're seeing today, right? We're already starting to see some of that fall out because companies were very jumping on the bandwagon and saying, we need to build agentic AI, we'll automate our workflows and everything else. And then guess what happened? People weren't adopting it, right? They weren't changing their ways of working. Or they didn't implement the technology properly. It was making mistakes. It was breaking down in certain areas. Or from a data privacy standpoint, right? Like, depending on what type of industries you're in, right, there's a lot of regulations. And so they started to realize there were privacy issues. So companies started to pull back a little bit, right? And now people feel like, oh gosh, now what's happening? Now there's all this backlash. That's going to be temporary. Right? All these things are going to start to work itself out, but I do believe we are in a hype cycle right now where it's going to explode, and then you're going to find people are going to dial back, and then you're going to start to see a real boom that becomes more sustainable, very similar to what we saw with digital marketing and digital media.
Yeah, I agree. We're definitely in the not quite the peak, but we're on the upward slope of the hype cycle. Is OpenAI profitable yet? I don't. Yeah. The billions and billions
but
of dollars.
But they're worth $500 billion.
Yes. The billions upon billions of dollars and the scrambling to get a piece of OpenAI, and they have not yet turned a profit. So I kind of keep that in the back of my head, that the biggest of dogs in the fight has not yet turned a profit, and carefully evaluating where my investment or one of my clients' investments is going to go.
Well, and also just keep in mind too, like right now, when we think about economic growth, right now, all GDP growth is being driven by AI technology. Yes, and data centers, everything else. And now, imagine when that bubble busts, we probably will find ourselves in a recession. But then, what comes out of that, we'll probably find ourselves being a lot more sustainable in terms of how AI technology is being leveraged.
Yeah, the majority of GDP growth, I was just reading, was data centers. And with taking out data centers, you had like 0.1% GDP growth or something. So pretty amazing.
Data centers specifically being built in like not urban, suburban areas, like areas like the middle of Texas, where the cost of electricity is very, very cheap and it's highly available. So you're having all this development, all these millions of dollars going in areas that otherwise don't serve like an employed workforce. So I do worry some there. I have some pause over what like the long-term impact is going to be to those areas where these data centers are being put up very quickly.
Well, actually, to that point, I think there's been 3 or 4 projects in the past maybe 6 months or less from the largest companies that have actually not gone in. And the reason is because the electricity costs in those areas that the data center goes in tends to triple for local residents. And there's been no subsidy from those large players. So basically these rural areas don't see much benefit from these data centers. So you could make the argument there's this societal benefit from these data centers, and I think that's actually important for our area because we have a lot of talks about bringing data centers here, and I think I have concerns too because unless those companies will subsidize to keep electricity costs at parity, then people are honestly just suffering. And there's a big societal buy-in that I think has to happen now, where society has to say, we will give you enough runway, unprofitable company XYZ, we'll give you enough runway and enough clean water and power till the end of time, or when? And it's so that we can see this benefit. So I think there's a little bit of a struggle going on there, yeah. Not to